everybody. Welcome to the HorrorQuest Podcast. This is actually the second one I've done this week. I don't know exactly when this will go up, but hopefully it'll go up pretty soon because I have a guest today who seems it has been almost impossible to get him on. But before I introduce him, I just want to say that we currently have the open submissions going right now, so if you're a filmmaker and you're listening and you want to submit your film, you can go on to www.thehorrorquest.com and follow the instructions there and get your film in. But today, we have a guest on the phone, and I talked to him the first time probably in October, and he was going to be a guest on the show that night, but I forget what had happened, but for whatever reason I couldn't do it. But then we wound up talking on the phone for about the same amount of time as the podcast would have ran. So we could have actually done the podcast, but for whatever reason we didn't. And then I don't know what happened, but it was either we would get the time off or something would happen, and I got a virus on my computer. So every time we try to set something up, it just never happened. So fast forward about 4 months. So he's here on the show now and is the director of the Horror of Barnes Folly. Jonathan, what is it? How do you pronounce your last name exactly?
It's Rock.
Rock.
Like,
okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I was wanting to say Ranch or like Ranch or something, but I wanted to make sure right.
I'll answer to either one, but embarrassingly, it is Rock, which.
Okay, so it's technically pronounced like R-O-C-K.
Yeah, like rock. Yeah.
But yeah, I've been trying to get you on for a long time, and it just seems like
yeah.
Because I think we got the time wrong last week or something, and because you thought it was your time, and I was doing it for my time because we're separated by like 3 time zones, so
Right.
But anyway, I wanted to get you on because I did really enjoy your movie, The Horror of Barnes Folly, which won the Audience Award and also won Best Supporting Actor for Dennis Gibbons. I guess that's his last name, Dennis Gibbons.
It's actually Gubbins.
What is it?
Pronounced Gubbins.
Gubbins. Oh, okay. That's how horrible I am with the English language. But but yeah, he won Best Supporting Actor for his role as the hunter Cornelius. And but yeah, I wanted to get you on and talk to you a little bit. How did you get started in filmmaking? Were you like into it as a kid, or kind of give us a little bit of your backstory?
Okay. Yeah, very odd the way I got into it. I'm from the East Coast. I'm actually from Pittsburgh, and so when I lived in Pittsburgh, I got this job working for a local promoter, putting on concerts. Every big name concert that you can think of, it went through Pittsburgh. We had something to do with it, and had all these really cool jobs. Like I'd have to take Ozzy Osbourne to the radio station, or go get desserts for Pink Floyd when they played the stadium. So I had this like really odd experience with working with musicians. And so when I moved out to LA, I wanted to pursue animation. I took a part-time job in a recording studio, and while it was a really cool recording studio, I mean, everybody that you can think of came through there. It was called The Complex in West LA. And for example, when I first started working, Neil Young was in one room recording an album, and Nine Inch Nails was in another room recording an album, and Paul McCartney had stepped in for a little bit to record in a back room, and it was just one of those kind of places.
Yeah.
And so they knew that I had worked with rock stars and famous people back east, and so they trusted me around these guys. And so I got the job of locking up the studio at night. So I kind of was the babysitter, just kind of kept an eye on the studio. And in that, I became friends early. I only worked there for like a month, and I became friends with Nine Inch Nails when they came in, Trent Reznor. And we would joke about stuff in the kitchen and stuff like that. And I just was a hobby of mine when I worked on the rock concerts to always like check out the stage show, the design, the lights, the props, all that stuff. And so no one asked me to, but I just drew up the Nine Inch Nails I just drew up a stage what I thought it would look cool because they were about to do an arena tour. And Trent liked it, and so I got hired based on my drawing, and so that was like enough, that was enough right there. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I've designed a rock concert stage, Yeah. And then out of nowhere, he then asked me if I wanted to go on the road with him and document the tour. So I was just like, and he was like, don't worry about it. Just pick up a camera, just be a fly on the wall. And so I went within a week, I went from going, oh man, I'm a stage designer, to like, wait, I'm a guy that documents, concerts.
Yeah.
So very bizarre. And so I did that for a while. And I actually didn't like it. I mean, it was fun at first, but I after a while, I kind of burned out on it. I really didn't like all the touring, and it just became monotonous. It was fun in your 20s, but then when you got older, it was just kind of like, it lost its thrill,
Yeah. You're not a rock star.
What's that?
You're not a rock star. You don't want that, hotel room every night kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, I even think for even musicians that, even for rock stars, it gets old, Yeah. And, I think the biggest thing, though, was you just kind of like ran around and pointed a camera at things. And, the creativity came when you took all the footage into the editing room. And so documentaries, where you're really creating stuff is in the editing room.
Yeah.
And other than that, it was kind of like you're just capturing things, and it really wasn't a full expression. And so I've always had this idea of like, I want to do, features where I'm writing characters and, creating these crazy scenarios. And so having done the documentaries kind of gave me the confidence to just jump in and make a feature, because I realized from doing the documentaries that like you can just piece stuff together later. Like if you're missing something, you can go back and get it, and it's like sculpturing. You kind of like you keep playing with it and sculpturing, and finally you've got something. And so I never felt like I have to capture the feature, or else, like the days we were shooting, for some reason, probably in an ignorant way, I always felt like, if I don't capture it, then I can always go back and get something. But, in reality, documentaries and making a feature narrative, it's not the same thing. But it gave me the confidence, and I guess maybe that was the biggest obstacle in the beginning, was just the confidence to just go do it,
So, like, when you were younger, there was no, like, desire to be, like, a filmmaker or anything like that? It was just kind of something you were just kind of thrown into?
Well, I kind of fantasized about being a filmmaker, like seeing old Spielberg movies. I'm a huge, like, Steven Spielberg fan, like, so I would see his movies as a kid and just be like, wow, that's got to be, like, the greatest job, And so, yeah, I guess there was a little bit of that, and maybe that energy was why Nine Inch Nails asked me if I wanted to document. Maybe they saw something in my creativity or something, but yeah, I mean, when they asked me, I certainly didn't say, wait a minute, I never went to school for this. I just said, sure, and I just got a camera and just figured, well, I'll just point at whatever's happening in the room. But when I was doing that, I always felt like I wanted to do more where I was creating the characters and deciding what they said and, what's the story, like just coming up with the story myself and not really just, having the story told to me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, going back to that, talking about like the story and stuff like that, like where did, because you said that you just kind of decided that you were going to kind of throw yourself into doing a feature. Where did the kind of idea for where did the Horror of Barnes Folly, where did that kind of come from? Because the movie does seem like, even though it's a complete narrative, it does kind of feel like almost kind of like a collection of skits kind of put together in a way.
Right.
So was it like an idea for a whole thing, or did it start out as like little separate ideas that you just kind of put together?
Well, okay. To me, I think this is the most interesting part. Like, if there's other filmmakers out there that are listening to this, I find this is like the gold that I discovered in this whole process. A while back, I wanted to do a feature, and so I just started writing a script, and I didn't want to know anybody's way of writing a script. I was like, well, I don't want to be tainted by anybody's, theory on how to write a script. I mean, I've seen movies, and I want to, I know how to write a movie. I've seen them. Boy, was that a mistake. It's like saying, I've seen someone play baseball, therefore I can play baseball,
Yeah.
I failed so miserably. I spent 9 months of my life trying to write a script, having never read any book about how to write a script or talk to anybody about it. And it just was like, if you can imagine trying to build a skyscraper but not understanding the foundation and what the lobby has to do, and it was a disaster. And so I didn't go back to script writing again for 4 or 5 years. I went and did a bunch of documentaries. And so the next time around, I thought, I am going to learn the most basic principles of storytelling. And so I went into a bookstore here in Los Angeles, and I just bought literally 10 books on script writing. I even bought Script Writing for Dummies, and I didn't read them. I just looked at all of the chapters in the beginning, and all I wanted to see what is the common denominator that every one of these books had to say. So I was trying to get to the physics of it, like the actual engineering, the non-romantic part of storytelling, the laws of gravity. Like, no matter how fancy you want to be, your skyscraper has to understand physics. And so I wanted to just know the mathematics and the most simplest of the mathematics. And so I saw what collectively every book had in common. And so from that, I felt like I had my strong principles of what a story has to have. And then I got a little bit of a philosophy from Woody Allen, who talks about that structure and how, don't try and reinvent the structure. It's like, don't try and reinvent how a skyscraper can stand. But once you get your structure in place and it's solid, then you can go back and hang all these jokes and sketches on it. And they're kind of like, they're not part of the structure. Like, they're not holding up the building. They're just there as like the facade, the entertainment, the visual of it, I keep going back to the skyscraper thing because that's how I just kind of kept explaining it to myself. And so, like when somebody does a film short, it's a completely different creature from trying to do a feature. It's like saying I can build a 1-story home or even a 2-story home, but now you got to build 90 stories. It's just different physics.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I painfully figured out a structure that worked according to the basic principles, and then it was just having fun once that was in place, like of creating skits and stuff to hang on it, and just kind of, I wanted to make sure there was a variety, a dynamic to the characters, and I thought about some experiences that happened in my life that I thought could, equate into little scenarios in the film that would be funny. So I drew from personal experience. I drew from like sketches that I liked when I was a kid. So just stuff like that.
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting that you say that, especially that thing about the Woody Allen thing, because kind of the lead character of the Horror of Barnes Folly. Now that you say that, it does kind of remind me of like a Woody Allen-esque character, because he's kind of like a bit of a nerd, but at the same time he's kind of the hero,
right?
And, the person who everybody's kind of turned into, even though he doesn't know what he's doing. So that is kind of interesting that you say that about like Woody Allen, because now that you say that, I do kind of see that influence in there, but you can definitely tell, especially when you're talking about like Spielberg, because like you said and like I said, it does. The movie does seem like a bunch of kind of skits put together, and they're kind of all kind of have a. I think when I talked to you the first time, like I kind of said this, is like it kind of, the whole movie kind of seems like a big episode of South Park.
Right.
So, like, because, especially that, there's a point in the movie where the hunter Cornelius is, talking to the town, and it's basically, straight up, Jaws. It's kind of like Jaws, but, just kind of, done like, by a bunch of retarded people or something.
Right.
So that is interesting that you say that, because, you do kind of see that, influence and structure, in what you're talking about in the movie. So.
It's funny. That's pretty observant of you to say that, because I actually templated a little bit, very abstractly. Like, you can't even see it in the film, but Jaws. It was, obviously it has nothing to do with sharks. It has nothing to do with the ocean. But I remember thinking every time I kind of got stuck a little bit, I would just kind of look at where they went, and I thought, okay, I see what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, and I just figured, dude, I just figured, like, I'm a first-time director with no real schooling. I need some sort of, like, mentor to just, so I'm not, if anything, just confidence to say, okay, well, if it was good enough for Jaws, it's good enough for my, my stupid little 7-day shoot film, And so, yeah, the big thing that we did was we had the town, it was the antagonist in the beginning, just as the mayor was in Jaws, and then you go from, halfway through the movie, you completely go to a different environment, which was the ocean, and for us it was the mountains, and then it was like the posse itself became the chemistry.